我觉得这个问班德先生啊，这个美国有一个叫 RICO 法案，就是反诈骗与贪污组织法案。我觉得王岐山、孟建柱、孙立军共产党在美国所现在干的事情，完全符合这个特征。我们已经探讨了将近1年多的时间了，最近进展非常大。那么我请问一下班农先生，就是说，入道之路这个基金现在，他认为是如何的用这个RICO 这个法案来对付王岐山和孟建柱、孙立军等中共的盗国集团，帮助中国人民查出了被骗、被黑的钱，他认为可能吗？他怎么看待这个事儿
？Mr. Bannon?
Yes, sir.
I understand that there is a RICO law in US that is a Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. So as you know, like those thieves in China, like Wang Qishan, Meng Jianju, Sun Lijun, all these guys, they've been robbing, doing a lot of corruptions in US. So what do you think about how the Rule of Law Foundation could help on using these RICO rules to fix the issues, to make sure that all these peoples are indicted in U.S.
Well, the key to the Rule of Law Fund is that our vision is that the rule of law will eventually become what China's governed by. I think if you set up a set of rules in China and the Chinese people know about it, that China will prosper. It'll be a fair and just society. Right now, you clearly don't have the rule of law. The rules are whatever the faction of Xi and Wang Qishan, the CCP, wanted to be, and that's why you're having people thrown in prison, people commit suicide, people disappear. It's just not acceptable. The Rule of Law Fund is twofold: to tell those stories, and also to do the investigations on the civil side, right? To help and we call it the 500 that have either disappeared or been destroyed in the last year or so. And so the Rule of Law Fund is very important. That I think we can actually take it to another level. And what I hope we can do in the first year of the Rule of Law Fund is in our investigations with the information we have is to eventually, present to the appropriate authority. RICO is used as a criminal activity by the federal court system and in the Department of Justice. What RICO was used by law enforcement officials to break the mafia, to break the mafia. And I think when you look at, particularly, I take H&A as a case. I mean, this is one of the reasons I'm so proud to have Miles as a partner, is that what he did on the H&A case, right? To me, he's clearly he exposed racketeering. And what I mean by racketeering is the use of a front organization like H&A, which was used for money laundering, influence peddling, bank fraud, wire fraud. It's a classic example of a criminal enterprise. H&A is a criminal enterprise. And when Miles Kwok called it out on Voice of America, and then when he subsequently called it out, they threatened to sue him and tried to sue him, right? And he proved it's all correct. He proved that it was not owned by the people in Hainan. It had been transferred to a couple of trust funds under the control of Wang Qishan, right? That's why all people in China have to understand, all the big Western commercial banks backed away, right? Because of who owned H&A, which they should have known, but they looked the other way because it was convenient to look the other way because they were making money, right? It was Miles Kwok that pointed that out. Then when Goldman Sachs pulled the IPO, right? I worked at Goldman Sachs. Traditional due diligence would have shown you your fiduciary responsibility is to find out who the owners was. It wasn't Miles Kwok's responsibility to find out who the owners of H&A were. It was the banks and the investment banks. This is what you're seeing right now, and this is why I think it falls under a RICO statute. You're seeing a criminal enterprise, which is the senior leadership of the CCP, that run like a criminal enterprise, and what they've done is they've gotten legitimate Western banks in London, in Europe, and the United States, working with them, financing them, taking them public, and all looking the other way, right? Just asking enough questions they can answer to kind of push it down. But as soon as you have essentially a whistleblower like Miles Kwok that says, hey, they're not even owned by who they say they're going to be owned on, and they threaten him with a lawsuit, and it's in the process of that lawsuit, he proves them right, all the rats left the ship. Where's H&A bankers today? Where's Goldman Sachs in the IPO? They all scattered, right? They scattered because you had a truth teller say, hey, to me, that's a classic example And that's just one, H&A. I think on bond insurance companies is the exact same way. I think you have many, many, many institutions that have been corrupted by the CCP and used as front organizations to, when I say launder money, to take money they steal from the Chinese people and to push that not back into China. It's bad enough they steal it, but not to even reinvest in China. To take that cash and to get it to the West, to get it either to London or to Vancouver, Los Angeles, San Francisco, or particularly New York City, to launder that money here. So they've got their investments safe outside of China, right? And so they can make money on their money here, and to use that as influence peddling to buy off politicians, to buy off accounting firms, law firms, and I think many of the media companies. I think that's all got to be investigated. The rule of law fund's going to do what we can do. But look, we're even with $100 million, we're a relatively small thing. But I believe that the more that we expose this, and I will say one thing I was so proud of working with Miles on the press briefing we had right before Thanksgiving here in the United States. The people that saw that came back to me and go, I can't believe this. I can't believe there's so many prominent people in China that have been either committed suicide or died mysteriously or in prison or just simply disappeared, right? I can't believe this. How can there be so many prominent Chinese and nobody's talking about it? People in China have to understand one thing. In the West, it's basically crickets about this. That has not been discussed. And as I use an example, you had one Russian who was poisoned in London, and that's all the tabloids talked about for a month. And that was terrible, but it's one guy. You had Khashoggi, and it's terrible how Khashoggi died, right? In the Turkish consulate, right? Terrible, terrible. But it was global news for 3 weeks. You've had people at much higher levels than Khashoggi or the Russian guy, right? You've had the elite of the elite in China simply disappear, and nobody said anything about it. It is one of the great crimes of the 21st century, and one of the rule of law fund. We intend to bring those stories up. We intend to bring up the stories of the families. We intend to continue investigations here to see who is complicit with these guys.